Awesome. Okay, guys, today we're learning about the Talmud on dreams. This is the Talmud about dreams. Stan, do you believe in dreams? Do you dream? Well, that's a good question. Do you dream? Do you dream?
I unfortunately dream too much now.
The Talmud says that if somebody doesn't dream for 7 days in a row, he's evil.
I'm not evil.
Okay, that's good. Verified, okay? But do you believe in dreams? Do dreams come true, Stu?
I think they're an insight into the soul. And
Oh, an insight into the soul.
I think they're very important personally.
You think that dreams are very important. Are some dreams Baba Mises?
I think they act out something that's going on that your conscious mind is not ready to deal with.
Okay, so there's something funky going on. There's something there.
I think so.
Okay, so what did you say before? You said there were a window into the soul. Wow. So when you're less conscious, that's when your soul is more functional.
You don't have the same defenses.
Right, you don't have inhibitions. Right, I love that. So you're so interesting how you say that your body is unencumbered. Oh, so your soul is unencumbered when you're asleep because the body is verschlafen.
But I think it also comes about in symbolic ways, so your unconscious mind can handle it.
Okay, I just want to point out to you something which I mentioned earlier in the series, that while we do the priestly blessing, we do it on the high holidays. While we do the priestly blessing, there's a special blessing that you're supposed to read, a prayer that you read in the Hebrew, in the Siddur, which is a prayer for the improvement of bad dreams. There's a special prayer to improve bad dreams, which clearly seems to indicate that dreams are, like you say, foretellers of some deeper truths or prophecies or something. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply to all dreams, but let's take a closer look into this concept in today's Talmud. I'd like to welcome Fran Marks from the north coast of Florida. Dan, we miss you, my friend. Hope that you're well. I'm heading to Kazakhstan today. I told you. Winston from Indonesia. David, who just left the show. Lauren from Mirasol. And Garrett from the Western communities. Shalom, everybody. Okay, let's go. So today's message, if you have the book, I'm on page 201 in the Ein Yaakov. So we're going to talk about true dreams today. Although we find numerous personalities in Scripture who merited prophetic dreams, Rav Chisda is speaking here in our Talmud of the dreams of ordinary people. To remind you, we said last time that we studied this, that Rav Chisda said, a good dream will not be fulfilled in its entirety, nor will a bad dream be fulfilled in its entirety, because every dream contains some false elements. That is the statement of the Talmud today. Again, Rav Chisda said, a good dream will not be fulfilled in its entirety, nor will a bad dream be fulfilled in its entirety, because every dream contains some Baba Mises. Okay? So, even though in Torah we read about many prophetic dreams, for example, the dreams of Joseph, the dreams of Pharaoh, now he was no saint, the dreams of Jacob, remember Jacob's ladder? You must have a painting of that somewhere. The dream of Jacob, right? Jacob's ladder. Who else had a dream? Well, we know Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, the Babylonian emperor. I mean, it comes up a lot, right? Here we're talking about ordinary people. This demonstrates that even ordinary people may sometimes have dreams that contain an element of prophecy. What the Talmud said earlier is that a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. You see, sleep is 1/60th of death. That's what the Talmud says. A dream is 1/60th of prophecy. Now that ties in perfectly with what we're talking about, right? This is expressed even more strongly in the Talmud elsewhere, where a brisa is cited that states, quote, a person could be asleep here in the land of Israel and see in his dream events that are happening at that moment in Aspamia. Sounds like Spain, a distant land. However, it seems extraordinary to assume that regular people, even on occasion, reach the spiritual level of meriting prophecy. I mean, this sounds a little out there. How can ordinary folk reach prophetic visions. How does this even happen? What's the mechanism? What's going on over here? We have to understand a little deeper how our dreams work. Even the great prophets of our nation, for the most part, merited to receive divine messages only after many years of preparation and devotion to a strict code of pious conduct. Here you knocked down 3 beers and you fell asleep. Now you're suddenly going to start prophesying. Like, what happened? Right? Even if we accept that the Talmud does not refer to an actual prophecy, as most commentators explain, it still seems pretty much incredible that such a natural and commonplace occurrence should be associated with any form of prophecy. How then are we to understand this phenomenon of dreams, of prophetic dreams? Several commentators explain that true dreams are so powerful because they are associated with the soul itself. We all have a soul, right? We all have a soul which is literally a piece of God. All day long, your soul is encumbered. It's got like this noise pollution that it's getting from the body. You know, the body wants pizza, the body wants slander, the body wants gossip, the body wants hedonistic pleasures, and the soul is just completely abused. But when the body is asleep, then the soul gets a break. Right? That's how Rabbeinu Bachai explains it. So the soul is a purely spiritual being. Rabbeinu Bachai, in his description, he's the author of the Gates of Trust, if you remember that text. In his description of 3 kinds of dreams, explains that true dreams come from the strength of the soul, which has the capacity to filter through the things a person has already perceived subconsciously while he was awake, but which he was not aware of, but which he was not aware of having perceived. You know, we experience certain awarenesses, even while awake, that we're not conscious of, because we're too coarse, we're too corporal, we're too worried about the filet mignon or the oil change, that we don't have time to focus on the more subtle, abstract elements of our lives. It's like not being able to hear the music. You know that famous story, Joshua Bell did an experiment, I think it was 2007, in DC, in a train station, in a metro station. Joshua Bell, one of the world's most expensive, most famous violinists. People pay thousands of dollars to listen to him. So he sat one morning, 7 a.m. in the DC metro, and he started playing the violin. Out of 1,000 people that walked by on camera, you see 2.5 people stopped to listen to the music. It was a kid. It was primarily kids. And they were schlepped away by their parents. We're hearing the music. We're just not conscious of it. It might be later in the day when things are calm. You're like, you know, this tune's playing in my head. I wonder where it's from. And you're like, oh, I was too distracted to realize what it was. That is how Rabbeinu Bachai, the 15th century scholar from Saragossa, Spain, explains the meaning of a dream. These subliminal perceptions bubble up to the surface of the mind, and then when a person is asleep and his sensory perceptions diminish and weaken, these subliminal impressions take form in a dream in the mind of a person. These kinds of dreams occur in people with a strong imagination, but this kind of dream is not a product of a conscious thought that the person had during his waking hours, nor something he has dwelled upon at all. It's not a conscious thought that you thought about. It's actually an unconscious thought that you didn't think about, which bubbles up to the surface when you're calm, you know, when you're relaxing and things, you know, you're able to have a catharsis of whatever is under the rug. This is what the Talmud calls a minor prophecy, nevuah ketana. That is, let me just finish. That is, the person is now seeing something that came to him from outside, something shown to him subconsciously during the day. It is not something that he is inventing in his own imagination. Now, let me just explain. Just hold your thought there. So the Baba Maisa dreams are the dreams that are just a product of the nonsense that you were dealing with in the daytime. So if you're thinking about things in your dream that you were thinking about in the daytime, then those normally are not prophetic dreams. On the contrary, it's when you're dreaming about something that you were not thinking about at all in the daytime, something that's completely out of left field. That is much more likely to be a prophetic dream. Later in the Talmud, the Talmud tells a story of Rava, Talmudic sage Rava, who was confronted by King Shapur of Persia, where he lived. And he said to him, if you Jews are so smart, he was an anti-Semite, if you Jews are so smart, then tell me what I'm going to dream about tonight. So Rav is a smart guy. He says, I'll tell you what you're going to dream about tonight. You're going to dream that your arch enemy, the king of Greece, conquered your country, Persia. And then he forced you personally to be his pig farmer with sticks made out of gold. That's what you're going to dream about. What he did is that Rava painted such a vivid image of his worst nightmare that he knew he was going to be thinking about it all day long. He'd be afraid to go to sleep, but automatically he'd be thinking about it all day long. Automatically he'd be thinking about it by night as well. Smart, right? So Rava did. So those are nonsense dreams. But the prophetic ones are the ones that come out of nowhere. You were going to say something?
One, I think the prophetic, you say, how can that be? I think that when you have a dream that really is that deep, there's a commonality with all humans across the globe. There's some element that we all experience. So I think there's kind of almost a mass understanding. And on the other hand, why is there imperfection? It's imperfection because man is not perfect. And a dream that would be perfect would almost be sacrilegious. Those are my two.
Okay, so I'd like to comment on your first point that, certain dreams, for a fact are true, are prophetic. How do we know? Imagine you wake up and you have a dream that your daughter should marry Muttel the tailor. So imagine you wake up. Now, obviously, in the movie, in the Fiddler on the Roof, he made it up. He made it up about if my saintly grandmother came from the other world, right? He obviously made it up. But imagine you wake up in the morning, you have a dream, and you hear that your brother-in-law and your mother had the same dream, exactly the same dream. Now you know that you're onto something. How about if you wake up in the morning and you dream that under the kitchen table in your house is a box with $10,000 in cash? You wake up, you open it up, you're like, yeah, I'm onto something. You know what I mean? You can tell.
Do it again. Double up.
So those are the kind of dreams that are prophetic. But I'm saying when you said something about a universal element, if there's dreams that other people are dreaming, or another thing is if you have the same dream recurring, also it's something we discussed later in the Talmud. If the same dream recurs, you see that there's an element of something to it. In the case of Joseph, when Joseph was in the dungeon in Genesis, and the butler and the baker of Pharaoh were dreaming dreams. It says each one dreamed a dream, but together with their own dream, they dreamed the destiny of the other guy. So the butler dreamed his own dream, but he also dreamed what's going to happen to the baker, and vice versa with the butler. So when Joseph interpreted the dream for the first guy, the second guy was like, I know that that's true because I dreamed of that occurrence in my second part of my dream, right? So when you see someone else is dreaming the same dream, you get right. Okay, so that is the person is now seeing. So we're talking about minor prophecy. What's a minor prophecy? Sorry, Rabbi Dovid Vigler emphasizes that this ability has nothing to do with righteousness, and it can occur in wicked people as well, as we find with Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonian emperor who destroyed our temple. It is not full prophecy and is related only to the strength of the soul. Hashem uses this natural phenomenon to manipulate Pharaoh into elevating Yosef out of the dungeon. That's how Joseph rose to great power, is because he interpreted Pharaoh's dream, and thwarting the schemes of the sorcerers and wise men of Pharaoh's court. Now, that was the Rabbeinu Bachai who explains that the dream is an expression of the eternal soul. Not because you're particularly righteous, because you have a godly soul. And that godly soul, functions, shows movies when you're sleeping. Maral of Prague. Everybody been to Prague over here? You've got a painting of Prague in your house. Prague, in Czech, the city of Prague. So the Maral of Prague was the famous Kabbalist in the 1500s who created the Golem of Prague to defend the Jewish communities from the from the blood libel. So Maral was a great Kabbalist. He actually was my grandfather 15 generations ago. 15 generations ago is my grandfather, because he's the 7th ancestor of the Alter Rebbe. 16 generations ago. Okay. Anyways, Maral also explains that this phenomenon originates with the soul, though his explanation is slightly different to the explanation of Rabbeinu Bachai. He says the neshama of a person, being non-material, has the innate capacity to roam the world and see many things. The soul is not physical, so it's not limited to this address. The soul is spiritual, so it can be in different places at the same time. But once it is joined to the body at birth, the physical senses of the body intrude and capture its attention, thereby distracting it from its own perceptions or overwhelming its own spiritual capacities. Where the body is like limiting or imprisoning the soul, tethering it. When a person sleeps, however, sensory input declines significantly, and thereby leaving the soul free to focus more on its own innate perceptions. In this state, it can know a great many things, even about distant parts of the world. It is not limited by space, because this is its innate ability. For this reason, the Talmud states that an unborn child, while still in its mother's womb, so the child is a soul without a developed body. The fetus is a child without a body that encumbers its senses, right? So while the child is in utero, it also has the ability to see from one end of the world to the other. That's what the Talmud says. That the child in the mother's belly is shown images from one end of the world to the other. It's an interesting concept. It's like a prophetic existence, because the soul is not encumbered.
But I don't know what it means that it actually sees as much as it has in its pure form commonality with every soul in the world. There's a basic element that it shares without being cluttered with other things that get in between.
Yeah, I mean, how it manifests is unclear. We're not exactly clear what exactly that means, that the child is able to see from one end of the world to the other, but at least we can get a little clue here that it means or perception, maybe. Yeah.
When does the soul breathe into the baby? Isn't it at birth?
Supreme Court Justice.
So when does the soul breathe into the baby?
When does the fetus have a soul?
The soul into the child.
So the soul enters the body. You could argue it's at birth. You could also argue that it's at conception. There's different explanations in the Talmud. But either way, the question is that it's not all or nothing. It's not in or out. It's a gradual process. Like death is a gradual process, where the soul slowly leaves the body. So to birth is a gradual process, where the soul slowly enters into the body.
What is the official stance by Chabad on abortion?
There's just a side note over here. We're gonna ask Chabad's official stance on abortion. We believe in the right to choose. The right to choose. Everyone should, you know this, Sandy. Everyone should have the right to choose if they want what they want to do with their own body. And if you want to kill the baby, you should ask the baby first.
And if he doesn't say no?
If he doesn't say no, then wait for him to be able to answer. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, absolutely.
Until 40 days from conception. Until 40 days from conception, there's no baby. From conception. After 40 days, there's already a viable fetus, and it is prohibited to kill the baby unless the baby is endangering the life of the mother. Okay, but there is no exclusion for rape and incest. For this reason, the Gemara teaches that an unborn child, while still in its mother's womb, also has the ability to see from one end of the world to the other. Since at that point, the soul exists apart from the body, the soul is unencumbered by physicality and it remains within its natural power to behold distant visions. You know what's interesting is that all of us experienced an element of prophecy. Talmud says that when a parent has a child, how do you know which name to give the child? The name of a child is of a person is associated with their destiny. So how do you know which name to give your child? I don't know what's his destiny going to be. I mean, I hope for the best, but So the name that you're drawn towards or away from is a miniature form of prophecy. It's an unconscious form of prophecy. And that's why we gravitate towards certain names and away from others in every particular instance. It's called Nevuah Ktana. So we experience miniature form of prophecy when we name our kids. We experience miniature prophecy when we sleep. Whether you explain it according to Rabbeinu Bachai, who says that this is because the soul, its stream of consciousness of the soul, which is a piece of God, or if you explain it according to the Maral, who says that slightly differently, he says that soul, which is eternal, which is infinite, is not tethered or not imprisoned by the body's perception when it's sleeping. Either way, it's very similar explanations as to what the power of our soul is. It just gives us a little window into the power of our soul. And the question really I want to leave you with today is, where do you live? How do you identify? Identify as a rich man in a poor man's body, right? Now, how do you identify? What is your identity, right? Do you identify as a body, or do you identify as an eternal soul? Do you feel yourself as a mortal being, or do you feel yourself as an immortal being? If you see yourself as mortal, it's pretty depressing. Fatalistic approach to existence.
All religions are based on eliminating or reducing the fear of that concept. Right?
Okay. I mean, I can't speak for other religions. I don't know, but I can tell you that Torah tells us that we have a soul, and get over your own limitation, break out of your own restriction, your own restraint, your own limitation. Break out of Egypt by embracing your own eternity, your own immortality, and this helps us grieve through the process of losing a loved one. What was that, sir?
Let me ask you,
Yes, sir.
maybe I'm just too confused on this. Having children, see, for me, children and grandchildren, children through the generations, that is at least a portion of what makes one, I don't want to say immortal.
Immortal.
But yeah, immortal.
It's a manifestation of immortality on a physical plane.
Well, okay.
That's physical, but it's not on the.
Yep.
Not on a,
But what do you say to someone that never had kids?
Well, that's
What do you say to someone whose
that's my
kids
question.
didn't turn out according to his
You look
legacy?
at the Rebbe didn't have.
Yeah.
his own
That's my question. That's my question.
You are eternal. You're more powerful than you ever dreamed possible.
You're always eternal.
You're a prophet in the body of a donkey. That's what it is, a vilda chaya. Our body's a vilda chaya. And the question is how you identify. We're going to leave it at this, guys. Winston, is a prophecy when told in riddles or when it is said in understandable statements? These are varying degrees of prophecy, Winston, where Moses, it says, would have prophecy in a conscious state. The other prophets would have prophecy in an unconscious state. Right? So it's varying degrees. It's not all or nothing. Some of us, for ordinary people, we might have prophecy in a state of sleep. Others might never have it. Some of us might remember. Some of us might not remember. It's different degrees. What? It's not one size fits all, my friends. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up over here and wish everybody a wonderful day. We'll continue the series next week, God willing. Actually, no. Whenever we study next in the Talmud of Dreams, 8:30 in the morning. Thank you, guys. Shalom and have a wonderful day.
Safe travels.
So why